Hello, hello, hello. I'm right here in the corner. I welcome everyone to the Pennhurst State School and Hospital. We will wait for a few people to hop in before we start the show, per se. As you hop in, say hello. We are going to share out for a minute while people start to hop in. I do apologize, the screen is small for the show that we are starting with. Did not want to upcode or encode or whatever it's called. When you come in, say hello. Let us know you're here. And then we will get started. Let me know you're here. Say hello. Just sharing out real quick, and then I will just hop right into this and let you guys know what we did this past weekend while helping family out of town. Hello, Bluegrass Paranormal. No, it's an accident. I didn't mean it. I got fat fingers. So, I think that's it. I'll let you do the rest. So, this past weekend, I am down in the corner here. Hi. There we go. I got it. This past Saturday, while we were in PA helping family, we had the pleasure to go to Pennhurst State School and Hospital. Everybody knows. Oh yeah. Pennhurst is a really, really good place to go. I do recommend everyone, if they have the chance and the opportunity to go. We met some great people, hooked up with a lot of great people, and we did a lot of investigation. Tonight is the history portion. I have the video that you guys saw that I had posted up here. I will start that in a minute. This used to be called Pennhurst Asylum. It got its name from the haunted attraction. That's it. Was never an asylum. Now, granted, the history and stuff you guys may hear and see tonight, I will put a trigger warning up. That way, if you are not fond with the history that we put up, that is perfectly fine. But this is the background and the history of Pennhurst. We cannot hide it. I have done a lot of research. My husband has done a lot of research. And there's no beating around the bush on how Pennhurst was operated and such. So we will get started. They pull me back down and let you guys watch. Sorry for the screen that is so small, but here we go.
and I are here in Pennhurst Asylum, formerly known as Eastern Pennsylvania State Hospital for the Feeble-Minded and Epileptic. Behind us, here behind us, outside of this, what used to be police barracks. Pennhurst Asylum started out in 1902 as a self-sufficient hospital. A lot of people already know this, but just kind of give you a general history of the building. So, by 1910, the asylum itself, the state hospital, was essentially overcrowded. 1913, a commission was set up for we did a little bit of history and stuff. Pennhurst State School and Hospital is located away from society itself, hidden behind a dense forest that cut down a lot. Residents had day jobs while here at the hospital, such as mattress making, shoe making, and repair, gardening, farming, laundry, most domestic duties. Painting and work within shops. Pennhurst even had its own railway system. Center area, delivered goods, such as that, delivered coal. Again, this was a self-sufficient school/hospital buildings. 26 buildings.
Used to be 32, but they went up now.
They also, with the coal, it was to help with the power plant. They had their own power, so they were not associated with the state of Pennsylvania, even though it was the Eastern Pennsylvania State Hospital. If we're able to, we will try to show you. We're supposed to be able to go within 5 buildings and the tunnel system within a couple of the buildings. And the Devon Hall, outside of the Devon Hall, is where the railroad tracks are still seen. As they no longer utilize the coal system and generating more of its own power, because eventually the state did give them power. They were able to basically cover over the railroad tracks, and as time deteriorates, so does the roads, and the tracks are now able to be seen. There was a documentary, actually, you can go online and look up Suffer the Little Children. It was a expose done by DC-10, Channel 10 News up here in 1968. Within that documentary, a lot of the actual filmmakers, while they were making the film, were getting sick because of the horrible conditions. I mean, they had children. Hence the name of the documentary called Suffer the Children. Because as they were going in there, they were finding that the kids were essentially locked in cages. They were anywhere from 5 months old all the way up to 6, 7, 8 years old. Basically, what we consider a crib, it was a cage, metal cage crib that
They went all the way around.
It was tough. And a lot of them were so bad that the filmmakers, the camera crew for the Channel 10 News were getting sick because of the fact that they were seeing them still in their diapers, 8-year-olds in diapers that were soiled. And as parents, we know when your child is going to bed. These were soiled for like days on end, like soil. The floors, the walls. I mean, it was really nasty to the point. Again, the family was getting sick, and didn't even want to come back. Some things to continue, but they continued because it was a 5-part expose on the conditions within Pennhurst. We tonight are going to try to hopefully communicate with people if they are here. We do have names. We do have names of the doctors. The one that was supposedly taking care of the children.
He was the one doing the lethal injections, and he was also doing the torture, and not only tying them to their beds, but also feeding them, neglecting them. And there would be ones that would come in there healthy, and by the time they leave, they're not even in any good condition, if they were even able to. Because a lot of times they would die in there. I did wind up getting 2 names out of this documentary, David and Joe, that Dr. Jesse wind up refusing. David actually was moved to the Devon Hall because he was misbehaving, and that hall seems to be the worst, and that is where he is restless. He didn't make it out of there. So a reporter actually got to speak with him and asked him, "Are you happy here?" He said no.
And the reporter that was here, Bill Baldini, William Baldini, came up here and due to somebody telling him, one of the patient's families coming up here and telling him, "You need to go up there and look at the conditions within the hall." And when he did, he saw what looked like the world's largest zoo, but it wasn't the zoo. It was zoo of people.
But their perspective on that was the zoo fed more and being taken care of more than these patients in the hospital.
One of the things that I was reading was we were looking at 2 different sources. I was looking at one source, he was looking at another. One of the sources that I found was that a lot of the children had what we consider autistic now is basically what she was. She didn't want to talk, and what she talked was very minimal, and because she had one seizure. Because she had that one seizure, they were told that she needed to be doing so, they came up to visit one day, and that was the reason that Bill ended up coming up here, because the conditions up here were so bad. They had, from one of the things that I read, this morning I read it, was the fact that the conditions were so bad that one of the residents was asleep while the other resident wasn't even paying attention. And one of the patients here, they weren't considered patients, they weren't considered prisoners, bit off the ear because he was so agitated and angry and hungry. But he bit off the ear of the one resident, and the other resident was still asleep, so he didn't even notice this until later on when they were trying to investigate why were you needing some kind of medical attention for your ear? It's because the conditions were so bad, and they were so hungry. They were lack of food, lack of nutrition, lack of recreational activity, lack of reading, writing, and arithmetic that we take for granted now. Back in 1910 and all the way up to 1968, when this expose came out, the conditions were so bad. Some of these kids could have just given crayons or some kind of art material, could have developed some kind of thing, something for the outside world. But because they classified them back then as you were either epileptic or healthy, or you were imbecile, retarded, or disabled. Well, nowadays, what we classify as disabled is you're legitimately disabled. And nowadays, we all joke about retardation or somebody being slow. That's how these people work. That was their idea. They weren't given the best education. Some of these, and not only was this also utilized for the feeble-minded and the epileptic, it was also immigrants, prisoners that were brought over here from England, Ireland, and stuff like that. They immigrated over here, and they ended up putting these adults in here. At one point, from 1910 to 1913, the amount of people that were in Pennhurst had risen all the way up to 2,791 people. The administration at that point thought that was like 900 and some more than what should have been in Pennhurst itself.
So, after the parent came and saw her daughter, there was a court hearing that was held on December 23rd of 1977. This court held, and it was based on the conditions of the asylum of Pennhurst. They essentially wanted to help them. They gave them a time hire more staff and to fix their problem. Well, by this court date, it has not happened. So not only were they being threatened to be shut down, but they were also in violation. So they were at that point getting fined. There was a petition filed for motion for it to change. It was denied. The order was denied. They said, I'm not changing this. You need to change your hospital or you're going to get shut down. And at that time, they had no choice but to rehome the patients that were left, because there wasn't many at that time, because they passed off or moved on. If they weren't passed off, they were able to be independent and go back home with their parents or family. And then if they weren't, they stayed there. And they worked making mattresses and shoes and, everything and anything. So by April, there was another notice that was filed for the appeal, and that was also denied as well. So it's not like they had a choice, because they weren't. At this time, they were not given a choice. They were told, this is what you have to do if you want to save your business. And in the documentary, Dr. Fear, and that's what everybody called him, great name for the guy, because everybody feared him. They did not like him, especially when he even admitted in the documentary for giving injection to teach a child a lesson. But an injection, a needle was, he asked the lab, is there anything that you can give me that I can give this child to teach him a lesson? In this day and age, you just don't do it.
One that he was coming to Florida, and he wanted to teach him a lesson to hurt as much as possible. They injected with this. Nowadays, it's because they didn't have enough staff for the amount of people. What I think that I read was there was per 30, per 90 patients, there was one resident. So when you multiply that by 2,700, there was only like 90 staff members.
If that, because a lot of them didn't want to stay because they were getting abused. They were also housed here as well. They had to live with the patients so they could take care of them around the clock. They didn't have shifts like we do now.
Sometimes there were no residents whatsoever. They got off on a Friday at 7 o'clock. They were back at their houses with their families. There might not be a resident there until Monday morning. So these kids were patients were fed for themselves to what we take for granted, potty training. That's a perfect example. You don't do it, you lose it. So that's why most parents will sit there and potty train until the they finally cleaned up. And guess what? Friday to Monday, pooping and peeing on themselves until Monday or until next Friday. So the conditions here were not the best. And hopefully tonight, while we're doing our investigation, hopefully we don't smell. We may smell some stuff, like you said, you may smell a cigar down in the Mayflower building. You may smell what used to be the janitor, maintenance man. What a nickname in the kid. But
it is known that if you leave an offering of a cigarette or a cigar or something, so this is what we have for him tonight. So we will leave that for him. It makes him happy, they say, for a few minutes. And then after that, he goes back to his old bitter ways. And it is known.
the unfortunate route.
So we're going to have to do an alone session on that one. Which I'm okay, because we have our walkies, we have communication, so if anything happens, they'll be fine. But he has been known to shove, push, scratch, and choke whoever is with him. It has also been known that he has a female spirit with him in the boiler room. She will tell you to leave and warn you. And if you do not leave when she says, then he will come off aggressive. He has been seen as a shadow figure. He has also been seen moving things. So that is one of our hot spots that we have researched and actually got a hold of. Other hot spots.
Mayflower building, prior investigators were scratched, pushed to the point of where they were pushed hard enough that they had a red handprint of someone on their back, multiple EVPs, EMF spikes. These buildings do not have power at all. So, administrative building. The administrative building, okay? It has no plumbing. At all. There are sounds of toilet flushing.
No toilet there. No bathroom.
So hopefully we're going to be able to go into an administrative building. We're supposed to be able to go into the Mayflower building, the Devon building, and the tunnels underneath of the Devon and Mayflower building. Rockwell building. So some of the tools that we're going to be utilizing tonight is ourselves. Linda has been in a meditative state all morning. I talked to her earlier this morning. She was gone. We do have our crystals, crosses. She has beads, crosses, stuff. So we are protected. We will be utilizing come to a place like this, please remember that you are needing to respect not only the spirits that are here, but also the employees that are here. Do not ask to try to do a seance. Do not ask if they know where the graveyard is, because
They're not going to tell you.
they know where it is. They're not going to tell you. Also, the thing about Pennhurst, it has been a Halloween attraction since
In the 90s.
Yeah, 1987 was when it started out as somewhat of an attraction. And then it stopped in protest and stuff like that. There are the Pennhurst Memorial / something LLC Society. They're trying to preserve Pennhurst, and then you have the Pennhurst Asylum attraction people that just like a couple years ago, I think 2010, they actually kind of coincided with each other. And instead of when they first started out as an attraction, they were starting out as an attraction in one way, and that was to make fun of feeble-minded that were here. And then eventually it came to the point where they actually were hiring disabled people to be members of the attraction itself. So it was one of them. They were able to employ the ones that were here to give it more of a light situation. And instead of making it it's still a haunted attraction. That's what most people come to places like this. They want some kind of haunted house. They don't utilize the interior of the buildings as a haunted house, but they do. It's one of the buildings that they used to. And one of the things you do is at the end you would come out of the tunnel, and that would be part of the attraction. So hopefully this all break this down and edit it down. Hopefully you guys will enjoy it. Did a lot of research. This is one of our bucket list places to come to, and hopefully you enjoy it. If you can, please remember to like, comment. If you like it, subscribe. If you really like it, tell somebody else to subscribe. We're working our way. We're able to go live with some things. But for the most part, enjoy. Until next time.
I've already did. Luxury right here.
How are we? Okay, so we have a solid. So you guys know on history tour. Okay. All right. That is probably yeah. Change is awesome. That makes sense. Well, I'll introduce myself. My name is Autumn. I am the site event coordinator here. I've been doing it for like 15 years. Coordinating stuff. I've been working here since like 2012, 2016 legally. Back up and then I actually started as a makeup artist for the haunted attraction. And I was supposed to just be an apprentice at like 15, and then they're a contortionist. I'm a contortionist. And so I was like, ooh, getting in there. And so that's how I started. I started as an actor for the haunt. The haunt being one of our main kind of sources of misconception. Because when you look up Pennhurst, it pops up as Pennhurst Asylum. So of course everybody thinks that this place is an asylum. Funny enough, that sign is not original, but it's more accurate to the kind of place say that 3 times. You can't. I couldn't. Yeah, I know. It's insane. But that is a very kind of long-winded title for what they were trying to describe as a whole subset population. About a fifth of us is who they were trying to capture with this. Feeble-mindedness, meaning any sort of neurodivergence. Not necessarily psychiatric illness, but more along the lines of autism and Down syndrome and ADHD in very severe forms as well. The epilepsy part included epilepsy denoted but also covered a wide range of physical disabilities as well, cerebral palsy, Tourette's, you name it, for years. A fifth of us are disabled, and we were all disabled here. That's why they kind of funneled us. And unfortunately, the hopes for this place really did vary throughout the history. When we started, it was a hope for rehabilitation. The hope for, just like in the case of Asylum, let's do therapy and treatment, and let's get people back into society. So we come into this idea of, hey, let's help business, let's cure them and what's coming out. And immediately we run into the problem because, as you most likely know, you can't cure autism. You can't cure Down syndrome. That's a person. A person is how they are. And so to take that away from them, yeah, they are. And so we discovered very quickly, unfortunately, in this like really terrible timing swing of things, it kind of really does line up with the American Eugenics movement as well in terms of how our motivations shifted. Very quickly, it became less about rehabilitation, more so about the square housing, let's become far away from everybody else, become overcrowded, and let's not talk to them. Because, you guys, who got lost in church? Anybody? I know there was like 10 people. I guess they're all engaged. We lost on Church Street. Y'all know this place is in the middle of nowhere. Very perfect. In fact, actually, we're on a peninsula right here, the Hoover River, literally surrounds us on 3 sides. We have 1,500 acres, fully self-sufficient, because we didn't have to interact with them. The outside didn't have to interact with us. So the purpose was no longer to spiritual rehabilitate. It was to sterilize. It was to ultimately exterminate populations. Keep them here until they die out. Don't let them leave. Because that's really what our core belief was. The foundation of the American Eugenics. Eugenics meaning literally food supply. If you are not up to the certain standards of somebody's society, you die. In fact, actually, we hear about eugenics a lot in the Holocaust. It's one of the most common terrible that people were Jewish and black and gay and disabled people. In fact, they're actually the first people prosecuted. 200,000 disabled people died in the Holocaust. And it was actually quite an astonishing thing that we found. There is a letter from Hitler to a member of the Board of Trustees in the institution congratulating them on how wonderful a job they're doing here, because they were the head point of sterilization in CA. When Hitler's telling you you're doing a good job, that's not a good job. That's not what we want here. But unfortunately, because of all these stern motivations and our general lack of understanding for the disabled lifestyle, we very quickly developed a lack of empathy. We started seeing them more as animals. And in fact, actually, in the legislation that rights and opening its doors in 1998, individuals that were meant to be housed here were referred to as homeless. I don't know. I feel like y'all know a disabled person. I will say my 2 sisters that I've kind of raised her myself are both autistic. And so raising them and to hear that kind of thing, it literally makes me it's like, the thing I love most in the world is and we see that sentiment reflects throughout the history. We'll get into it. One of the big things that we will see a really repeating pattern of events is underfunding and overcrowding. You'll notice, and I'll throw some numbers at you guys, but terrifying. We'll get into that one. But I'm going to let you guys see our administration building. And we actually house the haunted here. This is the main location of the haunted attraction. And that is because it's actually one of the very few buildings on campus that never actually housed anybody, which is kind of a basic respect that the prior ownership has. amenities in this building. This building's so nice. Like, this wing right here, I go in and I'm like, what the hell? There's carpet. And I'm like, what carpet? Carpet is completely inconducive to patient life here. It's not something we see. Because ultimately, a lot of us want potty treatment. So sometimes we make messes and we have to clean them up very quickly. You'll see with our furniture and everything, it's a lot of plastic, a lot of marble floors, stuff that's easy to clean. And I'm like, this doesn't make sense. There's no way that people live on this floor. No way. They'd never do carpet. It's too hard to clean. And the movies, a couple of other movies. There's a barbershop that's in this building. Those 4 windows, like in the bottom there, are actually going to the commissary, which is kind of like a shop, weird enough. Like you could get little sandwiches, little trinkets and stuff like that. And actually one of the most desirable jobs for an individual living here was to be a runner for staff or to work at the commissary. Kind of like a fun position to do to handle money. Now, residents were paid for kind of like wage labor and kind of dollars that they were able to use out the commissary. So I'm going through the space, I'm like, walls are colorful, it's so well preserved even today. Why? And so I asked Donna, who I'll probably bring up a couple of times in the story. She actually worked here during the heyday, and so I'm like, why is it like this? This is Autumn. It's because it's the Boys Education Center. It's because you didn't get to visit their person in their ward. You didn't get to see their bed or the bedroom or where they live. You didn't get to see the people they hang out with. You got to see them in this sterilized, colorful, beautiful environment. And suddenly it's easier to believe that that bruise in their knee was just from room service. It's not from abuse. When you're seeing them in touch, there's no chance. And I will say that Pennhurst is very good at putting up that image. We had these catered visitation areas. We had very limited visitation to begin with. Access to the individual wards was incredibly limited. And you'll find as well that the landscaping and the nature of the buildings, I'm sure you guys can tell, is still very beautiful. It used to be way more beautiful back in the day, with flowing gardens and everything like that. It still looks good. And we looked really freaking good. I'm sure they invested more in the landscaping than they ever did on the people here, which is sad, but the common theme will be. Questions? I'm here all night, but also just like shoot them at me, please. I'm begging you. I love questions. I always forget about most of the information you know. It closed down December 17th of 1987, and we actually closed down after about 10 years of a court battle. We actually went to the Supreme Court twice, and we contributed to another Supreme Court case, Brown versus Board of Education. It was a big one, actually. It's stinky over there. It's bad. We have a sewage plant down there, and the food pipe, we call it, is up there. I know. It's kind of like a little candy cane. It's the most miserable candy cane in the world. Right, exactly. That's the word. So we had a long court case battle. I'm going to get into it there. But it was intense. In fact, actually, the intent behind the court case battle to begin with, the thing that closed Pennhurst, wasn't actually meant to close Pennhurst. It was, in fact, meant to better the conditions. Cadence toy doesn't usually take people in here. You guys will end up in here anyway. This is what the landscapers in. Yep. That's our groundskeeper. That's Nate. I think actually that these were like the first ones he put up. These were like his trial runs because the haunt guest actually come through here. Yeah. He had a vision. He did. Oh my gosh. He put them on the Rockwell Tunnelway. He was like, when you guys go down the Rockwell Tunnel tonight, just imagine it without the lights on. Like, it's the scariest thing on earth. I used to be scared shitless to walk it up every night. And then he put the lights in, and I'm like, this is better. That's better. Yeah. Well, some of them still have asbestos. Most are structurally stable. It's kind of a difficult wrestling game with our owners. My strategy with them is I'm very passionate about changing every space that could possibly be safe. Is getting people in there. In fact, I actually, the infirmary was never supposed to be open. The person slated for demolition. We came in February and cleaned it out so we could get people in there. As long as you guys have it, it's very fun. We're earning money now. Please feel free to pop a blood on the ledge if you want to. Kind of like our halfway point-ish. After we're done talking, we'll be the halfway point. Just so you make yourself comfortable. Take a rest. Feel free to let along talking to the one video listening to one of your photos as the edge of the cup. But I would like to pause here to think better. Talk about kind of where we got really bad. Not even 3 years after we opened the we had already done that. An institution built for 580 people has already got 1,200 already. And that is kind of a common proportion. We're always outside of what we're doing, regardless of what we build. And we were building fast. This building didn't even so what we're standing right now is actually the hospital. Now, this set of buildings is absolutely massive. It's actually multiple sets of buildings. That's Whitman Hall 2 and 1. This is Wilson 2 and 1. And then the infirmary, which you guys will be in tonight, is over on that side. It's a massive building. It's absolutely massive. In fact, actually, Whitman Hall 1 is entirely compact. And despite that, the photo project we did still took about 3 times more. It's a lot of space. Lots of choices. Now, this is also sadly the location of one of the best, fortunately. This is where Queen's Rock Community Care. And that's because of that overcrowding number. Because with the overcrowding with global world capacity, we find very quickly that it's kind of hard to keep people working. They don't have the resources. They're not getting paid enough. They're certainly not well trained. That's actually one of the things that was in the 80s had a CPR test before she started working. And that was it. Fresh out of high school, she took a CPR test and was like, all right, and she's still here. So I guess. But again, the level of training kind of required here. So we find very quickly that we get away from the idea of training and teaching these individuals, giving them an education, allowing them to certain skills and things like that. Very quickly get into the idea of and that is ultimately where a lot of the atrocities that we see. Did anybody reading the stuff with the children? Yes, messed up. It's that film always makes you sick to the stomach. It's the worst, especially if you have somebody who's just able to close to you. However, I would recommend watching it. Because it's a tough watch, but it's one that's you will see emaciated individuals who are living here in these houses. Not the bed. Oftentimes, more often in the retreat. And those are two that are really good indicators of how we're not doing well. Our physical restraint is actually one of the things I mentioned in the court. In fact, in the case of Nicholas Romeo, who's lived in the infirmary, he spent 28 days of 31-day month. He didn't need to be in restraint. At home, he was not in restraint or anything like that. But that was one of the cases that he said by the government. Oh my God, this is a breach of human rights. And that happens in the case. Another case that happens in the case of Lucifer. If you guys have heard, I don't know if anybody's been in special education or anything like that, but the right to education in the environment, that's what is funded. This is a big kind of spot in the data history of the United States. But with that horrific use of physical restraint, also comes physical restraint, as I mentioned. Almost all of our residents go around some sort of psychotropic medication. Origin was a big one, a very big one. There's also one of the most painful ones. And there's a couple of residents that I always kind of talk to one, named Ring. And she was really just a little baby when she came here. She was 1 year old. She was happy, and she had hypertension, and all these things. And I saw her little inmate service. She looked identical to my mom. And the record is she's admitted at one, and she spends her entire life, she's known for being hypermobile or hypermobile, also hyperactive. And so they put her on chloroquine. Now, they use the justification that chloroquine is an anti-seizure. She had a febrile seizure when she was 9 months old. That is scary sounding, but actually quite normal. Febrile seizures, what happens is infants get body temperature decline, and then they see it and come back down. It's not actually indicative of a seizure disorder at all. But they use that to justify something, not knowing that when you put a person on chloroquine that does not have a seizure disorder, it causes seizures. And so at 9 she died from a seizure caused by the medication that was administered. So she lived an entire lifetime completely controlled. There's one where that control. And that's not a rare story. In fact, actually, overdoses and most of what we see here. A lot of patients, patient on staff, staff on patient, everybody when they exhausted, we didn't have the money or the training, or they understand it because we have to change the kind of thing. A lot of our understanding about who these patients are. And so we find that just the best information that allows us to see is terrible. So with the hospital complex, I always have to have this discussion. I hate the death discussion, especially from a historian point of view, because I've been through so many buses. I hate the question. It's like, okay, how many people died here? That part is we don't know. The leading experts on heavy don't know. Jim Conroy, who I believe is so leading, he's literally this all these things out of here. Was able to statistically prove the first time ever that group homes are better than human lives. He says that of the 10,000 5-year people that cycle through here, some spending their entire lives, that's really nice. Now, I can verify that that's records in a very strange text about 35. It doesn't cover, however, the pandemic. So there was a lot that isn't kind of factored in, is factored in the billion parts. It's a messy number. But this is actually the driveway where the nurses would pull through in order to grab our people out. Unfortunately, this is the last place of which is a strange number. I would say this is not it was just kind of weird. In fact, actually, in 1940, 24 other institutions, just like vendors, operate. And a lot of them have conditions. It's a common pattern you see. In fact, actually, the incidence rate, I think it was the average age of death for individuals who were not was 24 in 1934. And today, it is like 70. So that is the kind of care that we're receiving back in that day. So with that, and then goes, I think you guys will agree. got off the teacher. They all kind of wide open, trying to get up the teacher. Because we really I don't know why. Because every record that is found, and I, in fact, I should have put it in. No, that's why I wanted to. I thought I do. I don't. It's always hard to do every time. Hey guys! Took a long walk. So what we're standing at is what we call Dietary C, and that's because that building is dietary, or what was the smaller part of dietary. Now, there were a couple of buildings along this stretch here that's right there and now. We had our Hershey building, which is right there. It's named after places in PA. Roswell there, and then the dietary building. The dietary was there used to be two wings on either side, Franklin and Nobel, and there was a loading bay out back, but in 58 after the we were making people work for no money for long hours. Not the best look. On that note, however, back there is actually our laundry facility. We were the largest laundry facility on the Eastern Coast for like most of our history. We generated anywhere from 2 to 10 tons of laundry. And that was done by 2 Pennhurst employees and 6 residents. Like literally 12-hour days and degrees of 165 degrees Celsius. I don't know how more people didn't die. However, one of the most common causes of death here, unfortunately, is exhaustion. There's a lot of young people that shouldn't be happening to, and that was because of the demand for living. The demand for, hey, we need to run, since you guys need to help us run. A lot of it was on farms, and we had a lot of farmers. Actually, if you guys pass the Spring Hollow Golf Course and you're local, that used to be some of farmland. We had 1,500 acres. There were 100 buildings. It was quite large. But they would work on farms, and we made all sorts of things like that. Now, with the kind of theme of eugenics and the second in our history, our gender method begins to make sense. Something that people don't usually consider because towards the later end of our history, we were in the midst, but this was the boys' school. In fact, actually, everything down here, like all you guys see, was intended to be the boys' school. Now, as we go along our history, we kind of intermix and, we bring girls down here and everything. But up on the hill, if you guys pass the Veterans Center, that used to be Pennhurst. In fact, actually, the same portion of the building is still on the basement, the foundations of what was which was a residential school. They had a bunch of buildings, like modular home builders, all this sorts of jazz. But they wanted to keep them very special because they really, really were against them reproducing. It was against the entire their notion of eugenics. They didn't want that happening. And so we'll see that all our units are separated by a lot of different things. In fact, one of the most common separations was disability. If you were a wheelchair or crib bound, you were all kept together, and you were all kept on the first floors of the building. Because no elevators. In fact, actually, the only accessible building on campus has 2 elevators in it because they thought it's the only building that needed it. It's the only building that needs it. But it is quite interesting because as you guys are going around, you can almost guarantee that the first floor of the building we were on was a crib and a wheelchair ward. Devon at a time was a crib. Mayflower was almost always a wheelchair ward on the first floor. And we'll see that people who farm will tend to stairs or upstairs because that's where they get from. This is not a good thing for fire safety though. In fact, actually, we were called a fire shop so many times because we really didn't have any of that. In fact, actually, for most of our history, a lot of people only have one stairwell. On this one, there are everyone to the side with a spacer. The car that's parked right in front of that is a stairwell that was added on because of the fire safety. So not the best kind of environment. Now, I will say that in a dietary building, all of the kitchens used to be even if that's a good theory. This cooler. I appreciate this. You're kind of right with it. The real reason is because one of the main uses of our tunnel system was to get food places. What we're standing on right now is tunnel. This is actually the tunnel that you guys will be in tonight. You're literally standing on it. That's the one right there. So you guys will be below us, like by 10 feet. This is what we call the Rockwell tunnel because it used to pop out right there where Rockwell was. And that's where our school system was. We're going to walk. Somebody asked me if the playground was just I didn't even know it. So this one is Quaker. Has anybody heard of Quaker before? Yeah, I always hear it. That's what they say. That's what they describe it as. And there is actually some historical truth to it. Now Quaker initially actually started as a fruit board, as many of our fruit boards do. It was a girls' fruit board. And they lived along this side, and I can tell you that the wards where they would have looked out from the bedrooms are on this side. And so our friends that were in our crib were literally up, waiting, watching, looking out into the friends, and they were literally confined for so long that their backs were straight. They called them fat backs. Confined for so long that, like, literally, one of my employees referred to them as the dead girl because that's what she called them as. She worked during the day. Right now. But after they realized that was kind of fucked up, they changed it. And so they moved our people who they determined were the worst of the worst, as you said, into this building. And so it was bad boys on the first floor and bad girls on the second floor. Literally what they called it, the bad boys and the bad girls. And this is kind of how they defined people who had sensory difficulties or had kind of the tendency to hurt themselves or others. That's where we now I hate it. I hate it so much because it's hurtful. Knowing damn well that my 5-year-old sister would have been in Quaker. Because when she wants to play, she comes up to me and she literally goes, and she laughs at me. I'm like, you laugh? Why did you do that? This is much to see. Because she is autism.
So you're just playing around, like a playful event, you go in there. What would happen when the people like try to fight back with the yeah,
oftentimes we'd end up in here. Yeah, it's a lot of the times we'd end up in here. Now, I always have such an abundant amount of empathy for these individuals. I have to kind of step back and encourage you guys to as well and think about it, because the conditions here are worse than we could have imagined. We know COVID messed us up. I mean, just like staying into our houses, like having to stay home with your family, the worst. It affected us. It affected how we do this. Can you imagine not getting to choose who you talk with, or who you talk to, or who is taking care of you, or who's watching you, or what you get to watch on TV, or what you get to eat, or what you get to wear, or anything? You know, we can't. The thing is, we can't understand. It's not in our comprehension because we haven't lived it. But I gotta be honest. In the simplest terms, if I had to sit in my own place, I'd hit somebody. I'd be pissed. Wouldn't you? Isn't it just fair to demand human rights? I can't be mad at these people for demanding human rights. And so I always come to kind of the defense of there is certainly 100% frustration. There is a lack of understanding. It's angry in there, for sure. I'm very excited to begin to investigate it, which was sooner than you guys think. Sooner than you guys think. Very close. We're almost fully abated. Once we're abated, I can go in and clean it. Yeah, let's do it. I'm very excited. I will not lie. It's angry and it's off. But I don't think that's because we're evil. I think it's because our age and our individuals who lived here have such an intense that it manifests in frustration. I think it just takes somebody to pause you and spending that time to get through that. You know, I can't define people by the conditions. Now I will mention as well, there were a lot of terminologies, and this is totally random, not related to something I always mention on the tours I forgot. There's a lot of terminology that we use nowadays that was actually used as diagnostic criteria for our individuals. We'll hear the term MR, which stands for mentally, and then the R slur, which we know now today, is not because it's more clever, it's a slur choice in large. But also, this is more idiot. All terms that were used to define individual here. In fact, there's a circular display thing where it's a little pie graph, and it's morally helpless is one of them, and then it's idiot, and it's literally helpless. And so it's this, it's me because you know, that's where we're at. Is unfortunately, it didn't start as me. It's just how we use those terms that do it. But I always tell people to keep in mind, we try not to use those terms because they were called that. You know what I mean? In a very real sense. So when you're like, oh, you're being an idiot for doing that. Oh, good. This is not a good look here. Certainly not good. I will also say we have a tendency to refer to these individuals. There's oftentimes a kind of misconception that we do. And we did. It started actually as an all boys indicator 6 to 16 was the range from the to, and very quickly that got thrown out because those kids grow up. And you can't exactly tell people to get out, not in this environment. And so we see as young as 9 months all
That's how we're able to cope with it. How can we generalize that? Just give them an education that's elementary. Their education. Because the older education doesn't make sense. Yeah, I know. Yeah. That's my son now. I read all the records. Yeah. I have like a
every guy is like that much. We've got really 7 people. The way that to us is our girls' wing. I always recommend taking the farther. But the second floor is the big deal. I always like get the context because it's always awesome. You're like, oh, one time I'm a girl. All that stuff. Some of it didn't really separate my routine. Unfortunately, that was something I was thinking. I say that the couple I mentioned earlier that were supposed to be torn down. These are the ones that I'm like, don't trust back in. They're literally always down. That's my cousin. Union is back there, and Vincennes is all the way back in the woods. They're really kind of beautiful buildings, but these are all residential buildings, though, catering to men and women. First floor is actually a girls' school, and something interesting that we found. We opened up a little inlet. I highly recommend it. And we've been hearing girls on the other side, which is really cool. But on that note, I wanted to kind of wrap up the impact of really how we play. Because this place is really, really important in terms of the overarching disabled rights movement. We have 2 Supreme Court that ran through here, and we can check the idea of where every person deserves an expectation. You know what I mean? Public, free, accessible. So we contributed to that. But the Nicholas Romeo case, as we mentioned, we really have our right to our education. It's very important to find that we're not left with anymore. For the most part, we really do still. The most important case that comes out of this case is the case of Terry Lee Hall. This is the most important case. In this case, was followed actually by her mother. Her mother's name was Winnie Hall. I don't know if I like it. I applaud her really for getting this place down, but that was not her intention. In fact, actually, Winnie came in with the idea that filing this court case was going to get better treatment because her daughter had undergone more. Literally, cigarette burns on her. There was one incident in which she had fallen and broken her jaw, and when the nurse opened her mouth to try to get her teeth out of her mouth, on the bone of her jaw. Horrific instances of abuse, of sexual abuse, and malnutrition, even cases of emotional. All of this, and Winnie said, "Hey, this ain't right." But Winnie can actually be quoted saying, "I'd rather have my child dead than not in an institution," which is why I'm like, we don't want our child dead. I understand this because she didn't understand that there is any other option. However, it's a very kind of interesting space, very gray. But this court case filed through with a bunch of evidence, and they ultimately decided that this place literally infringes on the human rights of these individuals. Now, we can't just close it. And that court case is decided in 78. We don't close until 87. And that is because it takes 10 years for us to set up homes, to set up to bring them back home. Because we had to find a home for every person. And so over that 10-year period, we're slowly cycling them out up until the point where there's 2 people left in Percy and they were actually in the physician's house. They named that until now, Jim Conroy followed about 1,000 of these doctors out into them. It was to prove that they do better out there than they do here. Significantly. And so we find very quickly that the institutionalization movement is defeated because it doesn't work. We found a better solution. And so this kind of launches the closure of institutions all across with many, many closures. I will say, however, this is not like the end. Public institutions. So there are some private institutions. In fact, actually, one of the ones I talk about all the time is Elwyn. Elwyn is still open fact that they were founded by eugenicists. Neglect and horrific conditions, much like the Jews. It's we're still kind of hiding this history. So that's really why we talk about it. There's lots of horrific kind of instances that our disabled friends run into in terms of just daily living. We find that if we will actually deny a person's disability is sudden because of their disability. There's instances where people are getting married because there's support from them, there's healthcare and things like that. Lots of instances of like really just legislative things that I'll link you guys up if you want. But I know y'all are like, and I will say that I'm not worried about my kid not being able to get married yet. I'm like, okay, hopefully we don't have to worry about the organ transplant. What I am worried about, and what I worry about every single day, is that she's going to be bullied. Because it's already happening. It is 9, and she has considered suicide because she has autism. She has to work so hard. And I think that's something we can change, ultimately, and it's something that legislators do. So I have to be really understand that there's a purpose behind that. Understand that literally our disabled friends from them. So on that note, hope you guys enjoyed the tour. When we get back, separate you guys never to it.
Hello, guys. I know the volume was not the best. I do apologize for that. The lady we had for our tour, Chris, is in here. He could tell you she was amazing. She had a great knowledge. She knew what she was talking about. She, like she said before, she worked here way before she was legally able to. And to clear up the name, if you didn't catch it when she was talking, Pennhurst Asylum is only the haunted attraction. That's it. Other than that, it is Pennhurst State School and Hospital. So we are going to continue in our show tonight, and I do have 3 archived videos that I am allowed to show. So we will start with that. Keep in mind, this is the real hospital. This was back when they were open. These are not, these are original. They are not from today. So the language and the content you may see may be a little disturbing, hence the reason, the trigger warning at the bottom. So I do apologize, but we do research for the history, backstory, and our investigation. So tonight is the history and backstory, and Thursday is the investigation.
Which was
Go ahead.
very, very interesting. Chris, who's in the
See, that goes, I'm scared already.
Chris, who's in the chat, Chris R9.
Mm-hmm.
He was one of the people that actually joined up with me and Linda while we were walking around. He got very interested in the SLS while we were in the tunnel area.
Yep.
He was wondering what was going on and stuff like that, and it was.
I love the SLS, but don't ask me to put it together because I don't know what the fudge I'm doing. I'm just throwing it out there. I would not have any clue where to start.
The tunnel area started draining the batteries, and by the time we got to close to our last building, the SLS was just going crazy. It didn't want to stay charged. It didn't want to do anything really.
Speaking about batteries, I used this that night, and Chad had our good one. I went through 8 batteries before we got out of the tunnel. I had a total of 12 and a backup battery that you would plug into the back like we normally do. So it'll help it charge and stay a lot longer. That prevents us from changing batteries every 5 minutes. And normally it would help. Not in the tunnel.
Yes, 8 different batteries. I was
Yes.
connected to one of our battery packs, and by the time we finished that evening, it went from it was fully charged. By the time we got to close to the last building, we were down. It was almost down to like 25%.
Yeah, I had it attached to the battery pack when we first got into the tunnel, and it was helping it until it completely took the battery pack and 8 batteries. Because I always keep my spare batteries in our protective sleeve and in my pocket, just in case.
The protective sleeve is, if you ever get the SB7
Little spirit box thing.
little spirit box, you can, especially from not promoting it, but if you get it from the Go Shop,
it's pretty good. It's a good equipment.
They give you can purchase for a couple extra dollars this sleeve that you're supposed to put the spirit box into, so that it doesn't get it basically doesn't pick up any real radio frequencies.
Yeah, Chris, that was nuts. I was honestly, I was starting to get a little agitated. I was like, I literally just put this in here less than 5 minutes ago, and you're already taking it. And the good camera that Chad had panning down straight, you actually see my camera off to the side after I change it, and you see how many times I change it, and I let it sit, and within a matter of minutes, it's drained and it's done. It's like I was sitting there communicating with it, and the gentleman that was there with us, and everything was going great. They were responding with the REM pod. I mean, some exciting stuff, but it was also interacting with my camera. So it was a very weird but exciting night. We had some stuff pop up that we weren't expecting and so forth. Chris, R9 in here actually caught an EVP. So of a little girl when Chad and him were in the women's office, I believe it was. So that was pretty good. I mean, it's just a lot of great things, but I'm going to move on to the videos because each one of them are 11 minutes and 20 minutes and 50 minutes, so we got quite a bit to go through. Stay tuned. Let me know if you can hear it.
It's quiet here. Now outside these buildings, all you can hear is the sound of the breeze and calls of birds. But when I was a young man, a research psychologist visiting this place, standing outside these buildings, all you could hear was human screams.
Thank you, C-Dub.
Pennhurst.
Those screams, heard by Dr. Conroy years ago, like these shuttered and boarded buildings, are now silent. The residents of these halls are all gone, but held within this brick and mortar is their story, a story that echoes to the core of our nation and resonates with the spirit of our people, especially Americans with disabilities. Contained within 20 empty buildings resides the narrative of some of those very Americans. Theirs is an account of tremendous suffering and darkness, met by incredible courage and fortitude of spirit. This is the story of a silenced and abandoned people finding a collective voice, claiming their freedom and changing our world and our hearts forever. In 1908, the institution was established under the name the Eastern Pennsylvania Institution of the Feeble-Minded and Epileptic. As defined by its founding legislation, its express purpose was to be a home for the, quote, detention, care, and training of idiotic and feeble-minded persons. Time would bear out a strong emphasis on this leading directive of detention. In that time, medical treatment for the intellectually disabled consisted of forceful segregation and sterilization of youth deemed as, quote, feeble-minded. The belief was that this wholesale practice was best for the sake of the disabled and for society at large. It was social Darwinism in literal, brutal practice. Over the first half of the 20th century, the complex swelled from a few hilltop halls overlooking the Schuylkill River into a 1,200-acre complex of over 25 buildings. In 1924, the name was changed to Pennhurst State School and Hospital, a name that would eventually earn infamy. In time, the complex housed upwards of 3,500 patients. Through most of Pennhurst history, the admission of individuals to the institution required only a court order or a doctor's certification of an individual's mental retardation and need of care. Such certification would irreversibly change an individual's life. Over its 80 years of operation, more than 10,500 souls were dispatched to Pennhurst. Many were children at the time of their admission. They would grow from childhood to old age, with no choice of leaving the institution, no opportunity or freedom to return to larger society. Theirs was an America decidedly without liberties. In hospital-like dormitories, the interned residents lived year upon year, sleeping in beds stacked end to end in great halls. The extremely disabled were confined to metal, cage-like cribs. By the 1950s, conditions at Pennhurst had deteriorated to a dangerous level. Chronic understaffing meant that residents, especially those with the greatest needs, were largely unsupervised. Custodial warehousing was the norm for those with the most severe disabilities, with little or no attempt made to provide any meaningful therapy. The perceived professional wisdom of the time was that individuals with severe and profound intellectual disabilities were hopeless. It was the prevailing belief they could not progress. Any attempt at treatment was viewed as meaningless. For a population of 3,500 residents, the institution had a staff of only 600. Most residents suffered injuries or abuse at the hands of others or themselves. Despite the heroic work of some underpaid and grossly overworked staff, the tide of unmet human need at Pennhurst vastly overwhelmed the institution's resources. The horror of life at Pennhurst remained neatly hidden from public view. The sprawling forested grounds deliberately kept these forgotten people and their plight concealed from public knowledge. A movement of change was building, however, growing with the larger civil rights movement of the 1960s. Residents and resident advocates were starting to organize. In 1968, Bill Baldini was a journalist working with a local NBC affiliate. Baldini had become aware of the conditions at Pennhurst, and the station allowed him to pursue the story.
We entitle our investigative report, Suffer the Little Children.
In their living rooms, the citizens of southeastern Pennsylvania watched the reality of the horrors and injustices just beyond their own backyards.
The 2,800 children, young and old alike, residing within the confines of Pennhurst are for the most part protected from society, and the granite wall of ignorance and social blindness protects society from them.
The public was shocked and sickened by what they saw. The winds of change began to finally shift with the turning of a new decade. Through the 1970s, the civil rights movement of the intellectually disabled began to crystallize in the form of a series of unprecedented lawsuits. Through these cases, access to public education was open to the intellectually disabled. Ultimately, their rights were recognized to be constitutionally protected under the 14th Amendment. Most significant, though, was a case involving a young woman named Terry Lee Haldeman. Admitted to Pennhurst at age 12, in the 11 years Terry lived at Pennhurst, her development regressed. She lost her limited ability to speak and suffered over 40 reported injuries, many the direct result of physical abuse. In Haldeman versus Pennhurst, the class action lawsuit representing Terry's plight and that of many others at the institution, Judge Raymond Broderick ruled that forced institutionalization of disabled people was unconstitutional. The landmark ruling ultimately closed Pennhurst and numerous other institutions like it. No more could the disabled be denied their rights as American citizens. No longer would those with special needs be hidden away in secluded institutions. Basic human rights and protected civil liberties were legally theirs at last. It was vision and imagination, as well as struggle and determination, which transformed those screams heard so long ago by Dr. Conroy into voices contributing to our society.
It was shortly after Judge Raymond Broderick's landmark decision in Haldeman versus Pennhurst. Late one night at home, the judge's phone rang. He answered the phone, and on the other end, a young man said to him, in halting words, "Judge Broderick, I called to say thank you. I just learned how to use the telephone. This is the first phone call of my life." The caller had lived at Pennhurst and was now living in a group home in a regular Philadelphia neighborhood, living alongside the rest of us, employed and contributing to society. It's been asked if the people who left Pennhurst were better off. That's the ultimate question about America's efforts to do away with big, isolated institutions for people with intellectual disabilities. After 30 years of research, the answer is unquestionably yes. Those people who moved from large institutions to small community homes are better off in practically every way we know how to measure. It's one of the most successful social experiments of the 20th century.
The struggles at Pennhurst by the residents and their advocates transformed a very dark chapter in American history to a hugely positive outcome. Their noble efforts eliminated the need for Pennhurst and hundreds of other institutions like it by reintegrating residents into society. In this way, people with intellectual disabilities could enjoy their freedom and liberty, and society could finally benefit from their contributions as full American citizens.
Yes, I know it is sad. By the time we left Pennhurst, I valued my life just a little bit more, you know? They always say life is short, precious, and if you don't take care of it, it could be gone that quick. That night, I realized how quick and how true that was. No, they couldn't. They had one doctor. Dr. Fear was his real name. Jesse G. Fear, I believe. I know it's Jesse Fear. I don't remember him though. And that's what we're going to get into in this next video. I will not play it all because it is 50 minutes, but I will play a good portion of it and give you guys the idea of exactly what they went through during that day, their life at Pennhurst. The idea of them being there was to help heal them, teach them, and release them. not catch them, kill them, and release them. That is essentially what they did. Parents dropped them off and they didn't come back. A couple of them had a mother or a father or both come once. And what the young lady that was giving our tour explained in one of the buildings where it was carpet. Why? Because it was a mask to show, hey, we are legit. We are doing the right thing. They were not allowed to see their rooms. They were not allowed to see their eating quarters or shower quarters or any of that. Why? Because they were ashamed of what they were doing. They knew what they were doing, but they were hiding it.
Like she said, the carpeted, masked visiting areas were just that. They didn't want you to see the deplorable, despicable way that they were treating their people. I mean, they would bring them in for the visitation. Oh, Susie fell down and got a scratch on her arm. That's why she's bandaged up like that. They're not trying to show you that they were restrained to beds or toilets or anything like that. So they didn't allow the visitation areas to be seen like that.
Yeah. So when we came to PA to go to Pennhurst Friday after helping family, I was excited. I honestly was, until we went to the archives and we did our research and we start digging deeper and deeper. And for those that know how we work, we don't stop until we get the entire story. And, that's what makes our shows what they are, because we don't half-ass, per se. But I wanted to leave before we even got a chance to go. Pennhurst was one of my dream investigations to do. So we went. I really enjoyed the people that we hung out with and we investigated. I loved the investigation. But the history, I wanted to cry. Yeah, it is sad. But before I get all wimpy on you guys, because we all know it will happen, I am going to share this next one. It is the title, Suffer the Little Children. It has the interview of the doctor and the mayor. The mayor becomes the judge later on, and we will, after this, watch that interview as well. So you guys get the entire experience.
Chester County. In 1908, when the institution first opened, the man in charge bitterly complained to the state that the conditions were already overcrowded. He transferred many of the patients to Q1, a classroom building. Many of them are still there. In the 18th century, the mentally retarded were often ignored, punished, and exploited. Today, things are supposed to be different. Modern 20th century man is much more scientific and civilized. Today, we no longer punish the mentally retarded. We don't exploit them either. We have come a long, long way. Now we ship them 25 miles out of town to a state-operated institution and forget them while they decay from neglect. Pennhurst was first opened 60 years ago when the answers to the problem of mental retardation were considered to be segregation and sterilization. Sterilization, of course, is a thing of the past, but the archaic practices of segregation and custodial care are still with us and seemingly with the approval of society. The 2,800 children, young and old alike, residing within the confines of Pennhurst are for the most part protected from society, and the granite wall of ignorance and social blindness protects society from them. These unfortunates are being deprived of their dignity and self-respect. Why? Because only a very, very few seem to care. The horrible and almost inhumane conditions that prevail at Pennhurst are not the fault of a handful of dedicated doctors, administrators, and attendants employed there. No, the children, as they are all called, who are rotting in their cages, cribs, and beds, can thank society for their dreadful plight. We have forsaken them, not in the sense of what we have done to them, but because of what we have failed to do on their behalf. Unlike other minority groups, the mentally retarded have never had a brilliant orator to trumpet their suffering and appeal to the conscience of other men. Many of these children have always been without the benefit of parental love or guidance, partly because of the stigma of shame attached to their illness. They have been abandoned and placed at the mercy of the state. In the case of Pennhurst, the state has failed to do its moral duty. During the next 4 evenings, TV10 will delve into the problems of Pennhurst. We hope to find out why the current conditions exist. What are the problems facing the people running the institution? What has been accomplished in the past? And what must be done to correct the injustices the mentally retarded have endured much, much too long? We entitle our investigative report, Suffer the Little Children. There is not only a shortage of help here at Pennhurst, but also a lack of money and an overextension of professional duties. As we mentioned last evening, the personnel employed here are, for the most part, dedicated, but even the most sincere people can be pushed beyond their professional capabilities. One case in point are the physicians. There are only 9 MDs and 2 psychiatrists working at the institution on a full-time basis. They are responsible for 2,800 sick children, society's children. This fact sometimes forces medical personnel to work beyond their limitations and serve as disciplinarians. One case in point, Dr. Jesse Fear, a medical doctor. I questioned him on just how he handles patients with behavior problems.
We have found of late that it is quite effective to downgrade him a little bit and put him on a locked cottage with autistic type children or hyperactive children, a classification that used to be called low grade or that sort of thing. And it offends their dignity somewhat. They don't like it.
Well, you offend their dignity on purpose by putting them on this profoundly retarded ward. In other words, say a child with an IQ of, say, 69 or so would be put on a cottage with children with an IQ of 10 or 20, and this is how you lower their dignity. Do you find this an effective measure?
We have found it in some cases to be effective, but in other cases, why it doesn't work out.
Doesn't this degrade the person who is being disciplined to the point that he may regret?
I doubt it very much. Actually, what we're trying to do is degrade him to a certain extent amongst his fellows here. They make fun of him then for a while afterwards, but I don't think there's anything inhumane about it or anything of that sort.
How else do you deal with patients that are hyperactive?
I have given some of them intravenous phenobarbital sodium on occasion. Otherwise, they would do harm to themselves and others.
In other words, you drug them.
Absolutely.
Dr. Fear, can you cite just one example which shows the institution's attitude towards children that need just a little extra help?
John is problem that I think can be resolved if he is exposed to the right form of therapy. And so far here, we have not been able to show any benefit from what we have given him. There are places, and specifically Eastern State has a program that seems to help this type of case quite a bit. I had tried to get him into a Catholic organization. Turned out that his IQ wasn't quite high enough for them to accept him. They
So
do not
where is
accept
Johnny
new
now,
targets.
Doctor?
They do not accept new targets.
What's Johnny's IQ now?
69. But that is a relative thing.
Where is Johnny now?
Johnny is on Q2.
You have just heard about Johnny. He's been causing discipline problems here at Pennhurst, so they thought they would send him to Q2. We thought you would like to see where Johnny lives. Johnny, can you talk?
Yes.
Do you like it here at Pennhurst?
No.
Why not, John? Let me ask you this, John. Do you remember living anywhere except Pennhurst?
No.
Do you like talking to the people up here?
Yeah.
Why, John?
And they'd like to talk to me.
How about the other kids, the ones that can talk? Do they like to talk to you too?
Yes.
Do you like to talk to them better than the kids up here?
Yes.
Have you been talking more lately or less?
Less.
Why are you here in Q2, John?
I did something where I wasn't supposed to be doing.
So they punished you and put you here.
Yes.
Do they do this all the time to you, John?
Yes.
Johnny used to talk a lot more before he came to Q2. Ever since he's been here, he's talking less all the time. This boy, was he mentally retarded when he came to Pennhurst?
He was mentally retarded in the sense that he did not receive proper education. He came from parents that were delinquent themselves.
In other words, this boy was normal as far as his mind and being retarded was concerned.
He can progress to a normal level.
But he never will as long as he's here at Pennhurst. Is that right?
I cannot say that because
What are the chances?
Chances are poorer here than they would be where they have a program set up for this type of case.
There are too many Johnnies in Pennhurst this very evening. Unless the state provides more competent personnel and facilities, they will remain just where they are, stripped of their dignity, lost to society. Just how long will that be? Well, I guess since they are our children, it's up to us, isn't it?
So I know that hit hard for a lot of people. I do want to cry. I wish that I could, wrap my arms around him. That child was not mentally ill. He had an IEP. He was slow. That was it. I have an IEP. If that was me back then, I'd be there. All my kids have IEPs. If that was them back then, they'd be there.
My oldest son,
ADHD.
he had epilepsy. He was known to have seizures. So if we lived back then, my oldest son would have been there. And the unfortunate problem is
We didn't have a choice.
we wouldn't have had it. Well, now with ADHD and epilepsy and stuff, they have medications for that. I mean, my oldest was on a case study for improving epilepsy medicine. So
It's sad what they've put these kids through. They don't deserve it. They didn't deserve it. I mean, infants up to the age of 8 being put in crib cages. What was the point of that? Just so they didn't have to? I mean, this is not the history I wanted to have. It really was not. Yeah, it was pure evil. Yeah, I agree. Right with you, see that? Completely. A lot of them could not handle it back then, and it was not part of society, and the community never accepted kids like that. So they thought that was the only thing that they could do, is to put them in Pennhurst and hope it would fix it.
I mean, you think about it, that expose from Channel 10 News was done in 1968, and Johnny was, they say, 10.
Mm-hmm.
So he was born in 1958 to parents. Like you said, the doctor said, his mother wasn't that well off. She wasn't mentally capable of controlling a 10-year-old boy. I mean, us guys know how we are, and probably we're living hell to most of our parents at 8, 9, 10 years old. I mean, I have a 15-year-old son that lives with us, and I know how he was at 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15.
It just keeps going, don't it? It never stops.
I mean, he's a hellion, but at the same time, he's my hellion. So,
and we won't treat any of our kids, regardless what they go through. And it is important to remember that, like C. Death said, it will never happen again. That is why they have restrictions. They have help. They have, I hate to refer to medication because I hate medication, but for some things, you can't help it but to take it. I mean, if it's going to help nowadays with the study and the modern stuff that they have now and the updated stuff, not what they had back then. You guys heard that Dr. Fear did it out of thrill because he was teaching him a lesson. That's not right.
And then you have to think about also gender dysphoria. I mean, it wasn't as prevalent as it is now with the transgender community and stuff like that.
Yeah, that was another one.
Of being gender dysphoric.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I mean, we know of a couple people that are gender dysphoric, and that leads to a lot of depression, and with that comes anxiety and stuff like that. So if you figure if they were showing any kind of gender dysphoria back then, they probably would have been put in there.
Mm-hmm.
All the way up until 1987 when they finally closed down.
Yeah.
So.
And the mother that went and filed for the court thing, she was only trying to help improve, not to get it shut down. But in our case, and for the kids that were there back then, it was the best thing that ever happened to them, to be honest. It really was. Because if that would not have happened, it still would have been going on. So it's definitely a good thing. And that's what we're getting ready to get into now, is the interview with the judge, which was the mayor. And he will go in depth more about that. So let me share. Yes, we were able to get a lot of good things, but it's just sad. It just really is.
Enacted. But the implementation of many of these laws was less than satisfactory. Here in Pennsylvania, this lack of implementation implementation was at the heart of Judge Raymond J. Broderick's order to close Pennhurst, a state institution. This, then, is Judge Broderick's recollection and his personal experiences through the long and arduous process of enabling citizens to gain rights granted by their own humanity and the laws of society. Thank you, Judge Broderick. It's an honor to be here in these historic chambers.
Well, welcome, and I'm glad you're here.
Thank you. Let's start at the beginning. How did the Pennhurst case first come to you?
First, before I talk about the Pennhurst case, I would like to tell you about another case. I was, right after I was appointed to this job as a judge here in the Eastern District of Pennsylvania, I was assigned to a 3-judge court. And the case was one, I remember the name of it now. It was the Retarded Children of Pennsylvania. And it was against the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And what I learned in that case was that I have never forgotten. When children were sent to the public school here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, after a couple of months, there would be 1 or 2 in the school where the parents would receive a note from the teacher that the principal of the school would like to talk to you. And they would go in. And this is after a child about 6 years of age. I think it's at 6 years you started school. And the principal would tell them, your child has been here a couple of months, and we have finally determined that your child is not educable. That was the key word. Now, what did that mean? Well, that meant that the parents had to take their child out of school. And of course, it was explained to them that they could send the child to a private school or get the child into a state institution. But, you know, most of them ended up being at home in a room, like a room in the attic. And that was to me, that is something I had never forgotten, and I knew that something had to be done. We, the judges on that court, all agreed. And we finally got a consent decree. And that consent decree was one that ordered the Commonwealth to provide special education to children that they, the educators, thought were not educable. And to me, that was my introduction to the tragedy that was then befalling children in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And by the way, that case was in 1972. And it wasn't until 2 years later, 1974, that the Pennhurst case was filed. Well, the class in that case were the residents of an institution here in Pennsylvania, in the southeastern part of our state, called Pennhurst. And they were retarded children, retarded as well as retarded adults in the class. And finally, there was a hearing, and I can remember it was tried. That case was tried in front of me without a jury. And the trial lasted, I think it was for 32 days. And at the end of that trial, I made findings of fact. And those findings of fact were that the retarded residents of Pennhurst were being abused, they were being mistreated, they weren't receiving any programs, they weren't receiving any education, they weren't receiving any training. And one of the things I've never forgotten that was brought out in that case, in the Pennhurst case, was the fact that some of these people that went in there as being retarded had skills when they went in.
They could take care of themselves, many of them. They could feed themselves. They could dress themselves, and they could go to the bathroom and do all these things. And some of them could do a little more. But after they had been in Pennhurst for sometimes just a few months, sometimes a few years, they lost all those skills. And this was, to me, a real tragedy. So one of the things I recall was that after the testimony that the retarded in Pennhurst, the residents weren't receiving any training, as we use the word, no rehabilitation at all, the Commonwealth, in effect, didn't take issue with that. In other words, they didn't agree to it, but it was just a situation where it was so tragic that the findings of fact indicated that something had to be done. And it was shortly thereafter, I think in a couple of months after the trial of the case, that this court issued a decree, and it's referred to today as the Pennhurst Decree. And what that decree in effect said in those days was that they had to be transferred to the community. And that is, if they're treated in the community, if they're given education, if they're given programs that would teach them so they could learn how to act as closely as possible to how normal people act. All of their skills will be improved to some degree, but some of them are going to be absolutely surprising as to what they'll be able to do after a short time. And Pennhurst was closed. We ordered it closed. And we ordered that the residents of Pennhurst were to be placed in the community. In those days, we had in mind community living arrangements, we called them, CLAs. That's what we ordered. And you know, it's very interesting. And I want to point this out. Of course, an appeal was taken. And the appeal went to the Third Circuit. And the Third Circuit Court of Appeals recognized, I think from the very beginning, that this is an important case. And they ordered that the case be heard by the entire court. I think the entire Court of Appeals in those days had about 12 members, judges on the court. And they heard the appeal. But one of the things I want to point out to you, ordinarily when somebody takes an appeal, they ask for a stay of the court's order. They asked me for a stay of the order that Pennhurst be closed and these people be transferred. I denied the stay. They took an appeal of the denial of the stay to the Third Circuit, and they denied a stay. And of course, I think maybe you know, that case eventually went, well, there were 3 arguments before the Supreme Court of the United States. And at one time, they asked for a stay in front of the Supreme Court of the United States. And why do I emphasize that word stay? Because during this whole period of time, when this matter was being litigated on appeal, this court had appointed a master, and we were transferring those residents that were members of the Pennhurst class. We were transferring them into community treatment facilities. Finally, the appeals were over. We had placed in the community almost 600 of those individuals. And then, after it came back the last time from the Supreme Court of the United States, it was turned over to a great judge on the Third Circuit Court of Appeals for the purpose of seeing if the case could be settled. And he brought about a settlement. And the case was settled, and it came back to me, and we continued then placing the members of the class, Pennhurst class. The decision that I made in Pennhurst, of course, I found that they were mistreated, that they weren't receiving any, I've told you that, any type of habilitation. There weren't any programs. Many of them were being injured. Many of them were receiving, shall we say, medicines that in effect would require them to sleep most of the day. And this court found that their constitutional rights had been violated because they were citizens. They were citizens whose rights had been violated, and they were entitled to live in and receive treatment in the least restrictive type of environment. And that's the reason we ordered them out into these small community treatment facilities. The Pennhurst case was one of the first in the nation that went through to completion and was finally, the order was accepted here in Pennsylvania as to the members of the Pennhurst class. They had a constitutional right to receive treatment and to receive that treatment in the community. And that Pennhurst case today is one of the first in the nation that proclaimed that the end, I'll put it that way, of institutionalization. And in lieu of institutionalization, all of the experts agreed that normalization, they called it, was the way to go with the retarded. And why? They're just like the rest of us. They do what they see other people doing. When we were brought up, we acted like our peers acted, generally like our parents acted, our brothers and sisters and the other children at school acted. And that's one of the reasons why they should be out in the community where they can see how other people act. And that's how most of us learn. So I think that is a long answer, I know, but that is the Pennhurst opinion.
Did you ever personally visit Pennhurst?
Yes, I did. I remember visiting Pennhurst when I was Lieutenant Governor of Pennsylvania. And that was back in the late 60s. And I was shocked at what I saw. And I came away with one horrible impression. It wasn't anything that I found in the Pennhurst case itself. It was the fact that when I visited there in the 60s, the late 60s, there were 4,000 residents at Pennhurst. It was overcrowded. That was my first visit to Pennhurst. And I want to say to you, I haven't been back since.
When the order was made, was there an opportunity to extend it to people living at home and not in an institutional setting?
No. Why? Because, as I explained to you earlier, the Pennhurst class were the only ones to whom the order in the Pennhurst case applied and still applies. And of course, it's been my fond hope that those programs be instituted in the community for all of the retarded in the Commonwealth.
What has happened to the people who left Pennhurst, and what's been the most satisfying thing for you about this order?
Well, the most satisfying thing about the order has been observing and learning about the members of the class. And some of the results have been absolutely astounding. Right after the Pennhurst order, we were transferring the members of the Pennhurst class to the community. I was home in bed one night, and I can remember, and I might add, even in those days, I went to bed early and I got up early, but I remember that the phone rang. And I think it was only about 11 o'clock at night, and I reached over and I answered the phone. And the voice said, very in a hesitant manner, said, "Are you Judge Broderick?" And of course, as I say, it was 11 o'clock at night, and I said, "Yes, yes, what do you want?" He said, "Today I learned how to dial the phone. And you were the first person I wanted to call to say thank you for getting me out of Pennhurst. I have a job." And I think he said his job was with delivering papers with someone. But that gave me great heart.
Judge Broderick, wasn't there a study done in the early 80s that documented the progress of the residents, the former residents of Pennhurst?
Liz, I'm glad you reminded me of that. Yes, there was a study, and that was back in about 1984, I think. A study was made, and it was sponsored by Temple University. And it was a study of the members of the Pennhurst class that had been transferred into the community. And there are 5 points that were made in that study. And the first one was that the members of the Pennhurst class that were now in the community had shown that they had significantly faster developmental growth than was ever experienced by them at Pennhurst. That's number one. And number two was in the community, those residents that were receiving the habilitative services, they were receiving more treatment than they ever received before. And the third thing that was found in that study was the fact that prior to the transfer to community, 64% of the families of residents protested and strongly protested the court's decision to transfer their relatives into the community. And now, after their transfer, and that was, I think, within 6 months after the transfer, those same family members, that 80% of them were then in favor of the Pennhurst decision. Fourth thing that they found was that the class members that had been transferred to the community, it was observed that most of them seemed happier in the community than they were in Pennhurst. And the last but not least, the study revealed that the cost to the Commonwealth for providing habilitation in the community in dollars and cents was much less than the cost of maintaining that same class at Pennhurst.
Judge Broderick, before we end our conversation today, is there a message that you want to convey to people?
There is, Liz. I just want to say, throughout history, retarded individuals were mistreated. Their need for treatment and programs and education was ignored. And I would just like to point out, retardation is not a violation of the law. Being mentally retarded does not make juveniles or adults dangerous in any way to society. The mentally retarded, as Pennhurst case shows, have a constitutional right to education, treatment, and care. And the most important thing to remember is that a retarded person is an individual with those constitutional rights. When we talk to our friends, our relatives, our loved ones, there's nothing to be ashamed of. If you have a retarded son or daughter or relative, the only basis for your feeling that you haven't done something that you can do for them is that perhaps you better get them into a program where they can receive treatment, where they can receive education, where they can develop whatever skill it is that you provided them with at birth. That's my message. And that is a message I think we ought to tell the parents of retarded people, children everywhere.
So that was in detail what the judge actually did. I mean, can't get any better than that. We do not like the R word because it does get used out of context a lot. People use it to make fun of other people, or they, it's just not used right. It should not be used at all. And nowadays, we rarely hear it, which I'm happy for that. If you guys have any questions for us, go ahead and throw them out there. We will answer them the best to our knowledge, since we have done a lot of study on this. But I will let you know, with our studies, with our research, there will be no facilities like this ever again. The laws do not allow it. The states do not allow it. So they have better means and better quality of life for the people that need them. They are just like us. It is not their fault that they were born with something wrong. It is not their fault. Ray, do you have anything to add? No?
I mean, a lot of you can't see what I've been on Twitch.
He's on Twitch.
We've had a couple of our people that follow us on Twitch that have been constantly in the chat tonight. CDeath420 and Emilio688. I want to thank you guys for coming in. I've been thinking about this. Besides how they treated the children back then, it's like we just switched everyone to jail instead of asylums. It's true.
Yeah.
If you like the judge, when they went through everything, that was pretty much the beginning of what we classified now as the ADA, or the American with Disabilities Act. All the way back then, it helped people that are wheelchair bound to make sure that sidewalks have the little curb, the wheelchairs. If you're blind, the
grid,
the little tap marks on there on at the crosswalks and stuff, so that they know this is a crosswalk. I put in the chat with the people on Twitch. I was born in 1972. My father had another lady friend, and she had a child, and he was born with Down syndrome. Knowing this, I mean, he's 2 years younger than me, or something, a couple of 2 or 4 years younger than me. I don't remember his birthday. I'm sorry, Sean. But
Oh my God, 1 year older than me. That's rare. On Twitch.
Yeah, I just turned 50 this past year.
It's okay, I'm 40. I'm climbing slowly.
But knowing that Pennhurst was still in its heyday, I mean, and all the way up until 78, I mean, a lot of them were starting to be transferred out, but I mean, even if he was born in 74, he in southern Pennsylvania, he probably would have been going to Pennhurst. I believe he was born here in Maryland, so we had Forest Haven, which is a mental institution. He probably would have been put there. So I'm kind of glad that the judge kind of helped nip in the bud that a lot of places nowadays in most of the states have to have a school specifically for children with handicap, with some kind of disability.
I don't know. I'll have to write it down and check it out. See, I'll look into that.
They actually were talking about Edwin Shaw during part of our guided tour, and so that one's probably is abandoned now, or knowing that it's probably torn out. I mean, a lot of the facilities, if they weren't being utilized for something, they were either just abandoned and no longer standing, or most of them were torn out. We want to make sure that you guys come back on Thursday evening. It won't be as long as 2 hours and 30 minutes that we're almost going on.
I can't promise that. This was a good case. I don't believe in leaving anything out when it comes to a good case.
It won't be as long as 2 hours and 30 minutes. Once we cut through a lot of the investigation stuff with us walking around. I mean, we were recording pretty much the whole time. So a lot of it's walking around from place to place. So a lot of that will be cut out and stuff like that. But once we actually get in, you'll see a lot of our investigations with Chris and his wife, Michelle.
And I am excited to go back and do that.
His father and his daughter, who's happened to be having her birthday that particular day.
Happy birthday.
I'll have to drive past. It's not far from here. Okay.
Drive past, let us know, because I am writing names down of places that we were discussing in the chat.
One was a jail in Scranton, Pennsylvania.
So if there is any places you would like for us to check out, a minute, not my wife, LOL, just to make that clear. Oh, sorry, Chris. Please.
Okay, sorry.
Lady friend.
Lady friend that he brought up there.
After this is over and we close the show out, any places in the U.S. is where we're starting. So you don't have it to go over to overseas.
Yeah, we can't cross the pond yet.
No, not yet.
And an RV is not going to drive that far. We're working on trying to get an RV.
Yes, we're working. I've got a couple cheap sale, whatever, but we're working on it. This is where, when this is over and we close out, anywhere you guys have in mind, there are plenty to see in good old USA. Yeah, see, we looked into the whole renovating a bus thing. I think it was the one, C-Death, you were the one we were talking to about that. Recap on that for a minute. I did look into that. It would be kind of cool to create one into our own, but averaging out how much it would take to do that is a lot more. So much. Yes, it is. It's not only just the work, because that's something you can have with pride. It is the money aspect on it. It's the insulation and the framing and the electric and the plumbing and the, drilling, and, we don't have all those means. So we are looking for something small, something drivable. Right now we are traveling with our Ford or renting.
And eventually it will stand up to its name of Fix or Repair Daily.
Yeah. But we are starting to travel. Not this coming weekend, but next weekend we are going to North Carolina. I am looking for a spot to go there. We will be near, Jacksonville area? So that gives a general spot.
Yeah, where I was stationed in the Marine Corps, good old Onslow County, Jacksonville, North Carolina.
So
right near Camp Base Lejeune.
Thinking about that, I did see where one of the USS ships, I don't remember the name of the actual ship, but that's what it said, was accepting overnight investigations. But we don't have $450 to do that. So that will be put on the bucket list. And there's a bunch of other spots. So if there's anywhere you would like for us to go, investigate, check out, do research, let us know. Any donations are more than welcome. That helps us further our travel to show you guys the real history behind these places. Yes, some will be sad, some will be horrifying, some will be exciting, but it's just one of those, we love what we do. And we know you guys love watching us go on our adventures and do what we do. So every penny helps, gets us closer to our RV, gets us closer to another investigation. Even if you go to the shop, I have the mystery crystal candles, every bit helps. And, the more we get, the more hard work we do, the better off the shows would be. And maybe it'll be another 2.5 hour show. I don't mind the time. To me, it don't. Just gives us more time to spend with y'all. So, until then, we love you guys. Stay safe. Remember, after this is over, go in the comments. List. Put your spots you want us to hit up. I will write it down on our list, and I will go from there. So.
And much like I said way earlier in the video, like the video, comment on the video, kind of helps the algorithm thing to let us know. And also subscribe if you haven't already subscribed. Like Chris, we know you subscribed Saturday while we were talking to you about it.
And we do appreciate everybody that supports us. That is why we work so hard for you guys. We love what we do.
Twitch, we know you guys follow us and stuff like that. If you can afford it, because I know Twitch is a whole lot different than Facebook and YouTube. And YouTube. With YouTube, just hit the subscribe button. Make sure you go on to the little bell thing and click you want to make sure that you get all, so that way you know when we go live or if we pop up a new video or anything. With Twitch, again, that's a whole other thing. If you can afford to subscribe, or if you have it hooked to your Amazon, do the Amazon free and then keep watching it. And then if you like it, tell somebody else, hey, check these guys out.
Word of mouth is the best advertisement.
Right.
We're also on Anchor and Spotify, so you can take us on the road.
Yeah, eventually this one will be put on to Anchor and Spotify, and you'll be able to listen to the podcast. You won't see the video, but I know Spotify, I guess, has the video feature too. So our tech guy will be that's not me.
No. Like you're a tech guy, what?
And because we're not only on our Smith family, we're also on Bald Bunkers Network. And
It's all up there.
And specialists with PWI, which is Paranormal World Investigations, and Strange and whatever SAU, whatever.
Strange and Unknown.
Strange and Unknown, yeah.
Chris, thank you. It was a pleasure working with you guys on this past Saturday. Yes, I am looking forward to Thursday too. I will definitely get started on editing that tomorrow morning. I still have to do reading with little girl. Yes, Mom, I did write that down on our list. So up in her area in the mountains is definitely a plus. So I'm going to hop off here. So
we thank you guys.
Love you guys.